And I remember he was coming out of one of the hotels, and he walked by me, and he said, "Hey, Curtis." I said, "Yeah, Tone." Naturally, most of the members of the San Francisco Guardian Angels knew who Tony Bennett was. He goes, "You don't mind, there's something that happened that you never got explained to me. I understand that you were on the radio at WABC in the mornings, and you were bad-mouthing me." And I think I knew exactly what he meant, Lou, because when the Yankees had beaten the Atlanta Braves against all odds after being down 2-0, having gotten wiped out at Yankee Stadium, and then went down to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium and took out the Braves to win the World Series after years of being down with basement Bertha. There was the parade through the Canyon of Heroes. There was the gathering at City Hall. Rudy was the mayor. I was there in Radio Row because I was doing the post-game show right after John Sterling. WABC was on the Yankee Watch then. We had the Yankees. And I was giving commentary that Tony Bennett was known as not being all that pro-American. He's a very liberal, very progressive ideas, all true. And that instead of singing the national anthem, which was on the program card, he decided to sing America the Beautiful because he disagreed with some of the words. So Louie's now confronting me in a nice way in front of all these Guardian Angels who are wondering, what the hell? What? Curtis pisses everybody off. He's pissed Tony Bennett off. And Tony looks me in the eye, a short guy. Looks me in the eye and he says, "You know why I didn't sing the national anthem?" I said, "Tell me." "The notes are too high. My voice will start cracking. It's easier to sing America the Beautiful. I chose to change it. Had nothing to do with my politics." Oh, man, I couldn't have been more humiliated. I felt like a real schmuck, a putz, a pisher, a schmendrick. Oh, what could I say? And then Tony Bennett walked away in a huff and a puff. My only experience in meeting Tony Bennett, but then years later, after they did the reconstruction on one of the most magnificent theaters in all 5 boroughs of New York City, right down the North Shore, you get off of the Staten Island Ferry. You turn right, you go right to Ferry Hawk Stadium, owned by our own John Catsimatidis. But if you go past Borough Hall on the left, you go up the hill, past Vito Fosella's office, you see the magnificent St. George Theater that had been built in 1929. Seats 3,000. It was closed for many years. Then it was reopened 2004, and it was magnificent. And one of the headliners early on was Tony Bennett, and I was invited to be there. And he put on a magnificent performance. I mean, he sung all of his classic songs. And I was to learn later, after spending a lot of time in Astoria, where I am now, fighting for the election of Kelly Klingman against Tiffany Caban, that mini-me of AOC, all-out crazy Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Although, I got to tell you, having studied Tony Bennett, his politics were closer to AOC, all-out crazy Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, than to mine. But his father was from Calabria, which meant he had a hard head. And his father had left Italy at the age of 11, came to America, met his mother, who was actually cousins. A lot of people don't realize that Italians would marry their cousins back then. That was very common. I think her name was Anna. She was born here. And their marriage was an arranged one. I think her last name was Benedetto. So they end up in Long Island City. I think he was like their third child, second son. And Tony Bennett always said he was inspired by his father, who was a grocer, who had some tough times with his health, tough times economically in running his grocery store. But his father had inspired Tony Bennett to love music and to love art. And his father, imagine, died when Tony Bennett was only 10. So he had to go out there. He had to earn shekels for the welfare of his family. He sang, he drew, he painted. He ended up singing side by side with Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia at the opening of the Triborough Bridge. I will never call it the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge, the Triborough Bridge in 1936. As just a young whippersnapper. He went to the High School for the Industrial Arts, now called the High School of Arts and Design, and did not graduate. He dropped out and found work as a copy boy for the Associated Press. He worked in a laundry room and as an elevator operator where his boss, Lou, was Mr. Otis. You know, you go into any elevator, what do you see? Otis, Otis, Otis. And he said, I couldn't figure out how to get the elevator to stop at the right place. People ended up having to crawl out between floors. I realized my life was not going to be as an elevator operator for Mr. Otis. So he went out and he got work as a singing waiter. Frank Sinatra was a singing waiter. And so many of the greats of that time, when they were working their way up and they had to earn money because their families weren't independently wealthy, were singing waiters. And he was discovered, and then he went on to have a magnificent career which just spanned the decades. And I know a lot of people remember him with his duet with Lady Gaga. I liked Lady Gaga when she was by herself, when she first hit the big scene and had really good music. I did not like her with Tony Bennett. Sorry. It's okay. I prefer Tony Bennett as Tony Bennett. But out of all the songs that he sang, isn't it ironic? And he sang so many songs that were but so local in terms of his life growing up in Long Island City and Astoria and Queens, his time that he spent in New York, that the one song he would be most remembered for is that he left his heart in San Francisco. And remember, who recently was the great singer who has sold the third most records of any American artist historically? Where was he from? And yet, where is he most remembered? Right here in New York, Johnny Mathis. Johnny Mathis was born and raised in San Francisco. And yet, he's better remembered for all of his performances in New York. Tony Bennett was born and raised in Long Island City, Astoria, Queens. And yet, if there is one song he is most remembered for, it is the song of how he left his heart in San Francisco. Wow. What a giant. Unfortunately, with Alzheimer's and dementia in the waning years of his life, he took a beating at times for his ideology and his beliefs as a strong liberal and progressive, but he never surrendered, he never retreated. He was a man's man, a man of honor, and boy, what a set of pipes.